So Reddit, I'm in a weird spot. My husband, Tommy, 33, male, and I, 29, female, have been married for 6 years, together for 9. Our life has always been comfortably boring. We have a nice little house in the suburbs, 2 cats that are our furry overlords, and a routine that could put a metronome to sleep. It was our brand of happy, or so I thought. For the past 2 months, everything has felt off. The shift coincides almost perfectly with my starting therapy. This wasn't a we need to fix our marriage kind of therapy. This was a me thing. After years of carrying baggage, I finally decided to unpack it with a professional Monica. The first few sessions were brutal, but I started feeling lighter, like I was finally learning to breathe after holding my breath for nearly 3 decades. I thought Tommy would be thrilled for me, and to his credit, he says all the right things. He'll ask me how my session with Monica went. And say he's so proud of me for taking care of myself, that my healing is the most important thing. But his words are hollow. They're like store-brand cereal, looks the part, but the substance is just sad. There's an undertone to his support that I can't grasp. When I come home from a session feeling empowered or having had a breakthrough, a cloud descends over our house. He gets quiet, sullen, his shoulders tense up. If I try to share something I learned, something that made me feel powerful, he'll find a way to subtly deflate it. I might mention setting a new boundary with my mother, and he'll immediately bring up a chore I forgot to do or a bill that's due. The message is clear, even if it's unspoken. Don't get too full of yourself. Don't change too much. At first, I brushed it off. I told myself he was just stressed from work. He's been complaining a lot about his job lately, which brings me to the second and much larger red flag, the laptop. Tommy has become surgically attached to his laptop. It's with him constantly. If he's on the couch, it's on his lap. When he goes to bed, it's on his nightstand. He angles the screen away from me with a deliberate casualness. He used to be an open book with his electronics. Now he closes the lid with a snap if I walk into the room unexpectedly. His excuses work. He claims he's up for a huge promotion and needs to put in extra hours to impress the higher-ups. He talks about drafting proposals, running analytics, and collaborating on late-night projects with his team. He spins this elaborate narrative of corporate hustle, and I might have believed him if it weren't for one glaring detail. His company's appraisal cycle ended last month. I know this for a fact because his brother Christian works at the same company in a different department, and he was celebrating his own very real promotion just a few weeks ago. When I gently pointed this out to Tommy, asking if they were doing some kind of off-cycle review, he got defensive. He mumbled something about it being a newly created a special project and accused me of not believing in him. The defensiveness was so sharp, so out of character, that it felt like a spotlight illuminating a giant pile of BS. Tommy is not an ambitious workaholic. He's a do the bare minimum to get by kind of guy, and he's never been ashamed of it. He clocks out at 5 p.m. on the dot and prides himself on his work-life balance. This new persona of a corporate ladder climber is as convincing as a cat trying to pass itself off as a dog. It just doesn't fit. The combination of his weirdness about my therapy and his blatant lies about work has my gut churning with dread 24/7. He's become a stranger in our home. The easy affection we shared has evaporated. He barely touches me anymore, unless it's a perfunctory kiss on the cheek before he retreats to the glowing screen of his laptop. We used to talk for hours. Now our conversations are sterile, functional exchanges about groceries and bills. He's building a wall around himself, brick by digital brick, and I'm on the outside with no idea why. I have tried talking to him. I've sat him down and told him that he seems distant, that I feel a disconnect between us. I asked if something was wrong, if he was unhappy. Each time he deploys the same strategy, deny, deflect, and subtly gaslight. He'll tell me I'm imagining things, that he's just tired from all his extra work. He'll turn it around on me, suggesting that maybe my therapy is making me overanalyze everything, that I'm projecting my family issues onto our marriage. He's so convincing that I sometimes leave the conversation wondering if he's right. Am I the one creating this drama? Am I so broken from my past that I'm sabotaging my own happiness? But then I'll see him slam his laptop shut when I enter the room. And this happens constantly. My intuition is screaming at me that something is fundamentally wrong. This brings me to my moral crossroads. I know with every fiber of my being that the answers I need are on that laptop. It's the source of the secrecy, the container for whatever is pulling him away from me. Confronting him again is pointless. He's a master of denial, and without concrete proof, he'll just spin another web of lies that will leave me feeling more confused and isolated. So, I've started thinking about a more morally gray approach. I hate the idea of snooping. I believe in privacy. The thought of violating his trust makes me feel sick. But what do you do when you feel like that trust has already been broken just without the courtesy of a confession? I've spent the last week researching, not just guessing passwords. I tried all the usual suspects. Our anniversary, the cat's names, his favorite sports team. Nothing worked. I'm talking about keylogger software, remote access tools, things I only ever saw in movies. It feels insane, like something a paranoid character in a soap opera would do. But I'm desperate. I feel like I'm losing my mind, and the only way to get a grip on reality is to find out what's on that goddamn machine. I plan to wait for him to go out with his brother this weekend. Christian mentioned they were going to a game. That gives me a solid 4-hour window. I found a piece of software that can be installed from a USB drive in under a minute and will email me transcripts of everything he types as well as periodic screenshots. It's devious. It's a massive breach of privacy. And right now, it feels like my only option. I'm terrified of what I might find. An affair is the obvious and most painful possibility, but it could be anything. A secret debt, a gambling problem, some kind of weird online community. I don't know. And a part of me doesn't want to know, but my anxiety is killing me. And this is something I have to do. Part of me is even more terrified that I'll find nothing at all, which would officially make me the unhinged, paranoid wife he's painting me as. So, Reddit ITO for plotting this digital espionage mission. I feel like I have to choose between respecting his privacy and saving my own sanity. And I don't know which one is the right choice anymore. Update 1, 3 days later. Well, Reddit, I did it. I went full in villain. And honestly, I don't regret a single second of it. To everyone who told me to respect his privacy and try talking to him again, I hear you. I really do. In a normal world, you would be 100% right. But I haven't been living in a normal world for a while now. I've been living in a house of secrets and lies, and I decided it was time to burn it down to find the truth. The keylogger plan felt too slow, too passive. I couldn't bear the thought of waiting days or weeks for snippets of information while my anxiety ate me alive. I needed answers, and I needed them now. So, I went with a plan that was far more direct and, yes, far more unethical. I decided to drug my husband. Writing that out makes me feel like a monster, but the relief of knowing I'm not crazy has been a powerful antidote to the guilt. And hold your horses, keyboard warriors. Read first, then type. Last night was the night I went all out. I stopped by the fancy butcher shop and got 2 thick-cut ribeyes, picked up a bottle of his favorite expensive red wine, and made a decadent chocolate lava cake for dessert. I set the table with the good plates, lit some candles, the whole 9 yards. When Tommy came home from work, he walked into the scene and was visibly stunned. He asked what the special occasion was, a suspicious but pleased little smile playing on his lips. This is where I think I deserve an Oscar. I looked him dead in the eye, summoned every ounce of sincerity I had left, and told him I wanted to thank him. I explained that I knew I'd been distant and analytical lately because of therapy, but that I was so grateful for his patience and support through it all. I told him he was my rock. He absolutely beamed. He pulled me into a hug and told me he'd always be there for me. Loyal, sure, he ate it all up. Every last bite of steak, every last sip of wine, which I had carefully laced with a couple of crushed sleeping pills, and every last ounce of my fake gratitude. We had a long, leisurely dinner. I kept his glass full in the conversation light, steering clear of any topics that might raise his suspicions. By the time we finished dessert, his eyes were glassy, and he was yawning every few minutes. He mumbled something about being exhausted from his big project and moved to the couch, where he was unconscious within 5 minutes. The silence in the house was deafening, broken, only by his soft drug-induced snoring. My heart was pounding out of my chest as I picked up his laptop from the coffee table. He was so out of it that I was able to use his thumb to unlock it with the fingerprint sensor. And then I was in. For the first 20 minutes, my stomach sank. I found nothing. His browser history was boring. Sports sites, news articles, and Amazon. Things were looking legitimate, and I started to feel that familiar wave of panic, the one where I questioned my own sanity. Was he right? Was I just a paranoid woman projecting my issues onto him? And then I found it. It wasn't on the main drive. It was on a partitioned, password-protected section of his hard drive that I only found because I was desperately clicking through system files. Inside, there was only one folder, cryptically named Progress Reports, and inside that folder were dozens of video files, all labeled by date. My blood ran cold when I clicked on the first one. It was me. It was footage of me sitting on the familiar floral couch in my therapist Monica's office from my very first session 2 months ago. The camera angle was from a high corner of the room, slightly obscured by a bookshelf, as if from a hidden security camera. I watched in stunned silence as I poured my heart out to a woman I thought I could trust. I saw myself cry about my mother. I saw myself rage about my sister. I saw myself share my deepest insecurities about my marriage, about Tommy himself. I clicked through the other files. It was all there. Every session, every tear, every painful confession. Folder after folder of me unpacking decades of trauma, all for his private viewing. Suddenly, everything made a sickening kind of sense. His sullen moods after my therapy appointments weren't because he resented my healing. It was because he had just finished watching the latest episode. His pointedly supportive questions weren't him trying to connect. They were him probing for more details, checking his source material. Every supportive word he ever said was a lie, the script he was reading after watching the dailies of my life. The man I married wasn't just distant. He was my warden, and my therapist was his spy. The betrayal is so profound, so multi-layered that I can barely process it. It's not just Tommy. It's Monica, the professional I paid and trusted with my most vulnerable thoughts. Was she in on this? Did he install the camera, or did she? Is she being blackmailed, or is she a willing participant? I copied all the files onto a brand new encrypted hard drive I'd bought for this very purpose. Then I wiped the recent access logs from his laptop and put it back exactly where I found it. He's still asleep on the couch, none the wiser. But I know, and now I need to know the extent of this conspiracy. I can't confront Tommy yet. I don't have the full picture. My first target has to be Monica. I called her service first thing this morning and faked a crisis, begging for an emergency session. She squeezed me in for later today. So now I have to walk back into that office, sit on that couch, and pretend I know nothing. I have to look for a camera, a wire, any sign of the surveillance that has turned my life into a lie. How do I do that without giving myself away? What am I even looking for? And if I record her back, update 4 days later. It's been 4 days since I discovered my life was a lie, and I feel like I've aged a decade. The rage I felt has cooled into something much scarier, a cold, methodical clarity. I haven't said a word to Tommy. I've been playing the part of the dutiful, slightly distracted wife, all while a storm of pure, unadulterated vengeance brews inside me. My first order of business, as I mentioned, was Monica. I knew I couldn't confront her in her office. That place was compromised territory, a stage set for my humiliation. I needed to be in control. I needed to be on my home turf. So when I made the emergency appointment, I told her I was having a severe anxiety attack and couldn't bring myself to leave the house. I asked in my most pathetic-sounding voice if she would consider doing a home visit. After a moment of hesitation, she agreed, citing the unusual circumstances. I told her I'd make her coffee and my famous creamy pesto pasta as a thank you. I spent the morning preparing. I laid out the ingredients for the pasta on the kitchen counter. The fresh basil, the pine nuts, the block of parmesan, but I didn't cook it. I wanted the scene to look inviting and normal just in case my gut was wrong and she was somehow innocent. I brewed a pot of expensive coffee, the smell filling the house with a sense of coziness, and I tucked a butter knife into the sleeve of my sweater. Monica arrived right on time, carrying her bag and wearing a look of professional concern. I welcomed her in, offered her a coffee, and led her to the living room. She sat on the armchair opposite the couch, her posture perfect, her expression a blank slate of therapeutic empathy. The sight of her calm demeanor, the same calm I had seen in the videos as I spilled my guts, made my blood boil. I started the session by playing the part I'd assigned myself, the agitated, paranoid wife. I told her I was spiraling, that I felt like I couldn't trust anyone, not even my own judgment. I told her I'd found out something about Tommy, something twisted and dark, and I didn't know what to do. I watched her face like a hawk, searching for any flicker of recognition, any hint of guilt. Nothing. She just nodded calmly and used her therapist voice to tell me to take a deep breath and start from the beginning. That's when I knew I had to escalate. Words weren't going to break her. I let my face crumple, summoning fake tears. I told her I was too ashamed to say it from a distance. I stood up from the couch and walked toward her, my movements deliberately shaky. I knelt in front of her chair, grabbing her hands. I looked up at her, tears streaming down my face, and whispered that I needed to ask her something and I needed her to be completely honest. She was still in therapist mode, telling me that this was a safe space and I could tell her anything. That was my cue. In one fluid motion, I let go of her hands, slid the butter knife from my sleeve, and pressed it against her throat. With my other hand, I cupped the back of her neck, holding her in place. The change was instantaneous. The therapist's mask shattered, her eyes widened in pure terror. Her body went rigid, and she let out a choked gasp. She stammered, asking what I was doing. I leaned in close, my voice dropping to a low, steady whisper. I told her the game was over. I told her I knew she was working with my husband, that she had let him install a camera in her office and record every single one of our sessions. I told her I had the footage. For a second, she just stared at me, her mind clearly struggling to process the accusation. Then the denial came, but it was frantic, panicked. She swore she had no idea what I was talking about, that I was being erratic, that we needed to call someone. It wasn't the calm, calculated denial of a guilty person. It was the terrified, confused denial of someone who genuinely thought I had lost my mind and was about to murder her in my living room. I held her gaze. I asked her one more time if she was telling me the truth, and that's when she broke. All the professional composure dissolved into raw human fear. She started sobbing uncontrollably, begging me to put the knife down, pleading that she didn't know anything about any cameras. And in that moment, I believed her. The terror in her eyes was too real, too visceral to be faked. This wasn't an accomplice. This was another victim. I pulled the knife away and tossed it onto the coffee table with a clatter. I showed her the rounded, harmless edge. I told her it was a butter knife. The relief that washed over her was so intense she almost collapsed. She just sat there, gasping and crying, while I stood up and backed away to give her space. Once she'd calmed down enough to listen, I told her everything. I told her about Tommy's bizarre behavior, the lies about work, and the hidden folder on his laptop named progress reports. I described the videos, the camera angle, and the dates that lined up perfectly with my appointments. As I spoke, her terror morphed into a horrified professional fury. The violation she felt was palpable. It wasn't just her client who had been betrayed. It was her practice, her ethics, her career. She told me that a hidden camera in her office was not only a massive breach of privacy, but a litany of felonies. She started talking about going to the police, about filing a report, about the legal ramifications for Tommy. I let her vent, and then I held up a hand. I told her I was going to handle Tommy. I then gestured to the kitchen and said with a hint of dark humor that I wouldn't press charges against the woman I was about to make a killer pesto pasta for. She stared at me, baffled. I told her we were going to the police. Eventually, but not yet. I needed a few more days. I have a plan, and for it to work, Tommy can't know that we know. I need him to feel safe and secure in his little web of deceit. I asked her to trust me, to give me until the end of the week, and then we could unleash the full force of the law on him together. She was hesitant, but she saw the look in my eyes. She agreed. So now I have an unwilling accomplice, and I have a husband who is going to learn what happens when you turn a woman's journey of healing into a spectator sport. Update 3. 3 days later. Drugging your husband for the second time in a week is a strange kind of routine to fall into. It's methodical, cold, and stripped of the theatrical flair of my first attempt. There was no steak dinner this time. No grand performance of a loving wife. Just a couple of pills ground into a fine powder and stirred into the honey for his nightly cup of chamomile tea. An act of domestic betrayal so quiet it was almost poetic. He'd been insufferable all evening. High on the success of whatever sick project he was running, he decided to try out some of his newfound psychological intel on me. As we were cleaning up after dinner, he brought up an insecurity I had confessed to Monica in my third session. A deep-seated fear of being seen as incompetent, something my mother had drilled into me since childhood. He casually mentioned that he noticed I was second-guessing myself a lot lately, and that he hoped therapy wasn't making me less confident. He said it with that same hollow, supportive tone, but the message was a dagger. He was testing his weapon, seeing if the information he'd stolen could be used to manipulate me. For a fleeting second, the old me, the pre-discovery me, would have crumbled. But the new me, the one who knew her entire life was being recorded, just smiled sweetly. I told him he was so perceptive and that it was something I was working on. Then I handed him his tea. He drank it all, smugly, believing he was pulling my strings, all while the sedative worked its way into his system. He was asleep on the couch 20 minutes later, a half-read report resting on his chest. Pathetic. I unlocked his laptop with his thumb again. I went straight to the partition drive and navigated back to the progress reports folder. My folder was still there, untouched. But next to it was a new folder, one that hadn't been there before. This one was simply titled Assets. My stomach clenched. Inside, it wasn't a collection of long, hour-long sessions. It was a series of short video clips, each one only a few minutes long. They were clearly edited segments from longer therapy sessions. But the most disturbing part was the file names. They were all men's names: Xander, Christian, Marcus, David. Yet, when I clicked on the first clip, Xander, the video was of a woman I didn't recognize, sitting on Monica's couch crying as she talked about her husband's drinking problem and the money he was hiding from her. I clicked on Christian. It was another woman. This one, angrily venting about her husband's affair with his assistant. The husband's name was not Christian. The woman in the video was not Tommy's sister-in-law. My brother-in-law's name on a folder containing footage of a stranger's therapy session. It made no sense. This was bigger and weirder than I could have ever imagined. I spent the next hour meticulously copying the entire assets folder onto my encrypted drive, my mind racing to connect the dots. Why did my husband have curated clips of Monica's other patients? And why were they labeled with men's names? The next morning, I called Monica. I told her I had found something else, something that implicated more people. We agreed to meet at a neutral location, a quiet corner of a public library in the next town over. When I showed her the files on my laptop, her face went from pale to ashen. She recognized each of the women in the videos as her clients. She watched, horrified as they shared their most intimate secrets, all neatly edited and packaged for some unknown purpose. When she saw the file names, she froze. "I shouldn't be telling you this," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She then said that client confidentiality is absolute, but this is a crime scene. These women are in danger and we don't even know how. She took a deep breath. The file names, Xander, Christian, Marcus, those are the names of their husbands. We sat in stunned silence. My husband had recordings of Monica's clients talking about their husbands, and he had labeled the files with the husbands' names. But why? What was the connection between these men? My mind was a tangled mess of conspiracy theories, none of which seemed to fit. The answer walked right through my front door that evening. Tommy came home radiating an obnoxious, triumphant energy. He was holding a cheap glass trophy and a framed certificate. "Guess who just won Employee of the Month?" he announced, puffing out his chest. He said his hard work on the special project had finally paid off, and that big things were coming his way. He handed me his phone to show me a picture of him standing with his team and the regional manager, all of them beaming. "It's a huge honor," I said, pointing at the faces in the photo. "That's my direct manager, Xander, and those are my colleagues, Marcus and David. The whole team is celebrating." The names hit me like a physical blow. Xander, Marcus, David. They were the names of the folders. And then I remembered the other folder, the one that had made my blood run cold. Christian, his own brother. Suddenly, the entire depraved puzzle snapped into place with horrifying clarity. This wasn't just about controlling me. This was a corporate espionage scheme fueled by emotional trauma. He was using the intimate, painful secrets of these women, secrets about their husbands as leverage. He was collecting ammunition on his manager and his colleagues to blackmail his way up the corporate ladder. The special project was real, but it wasn't for his company. It was for himself. The Employee of the Month award wasn't earned. It was extorted. The next day, while he was at work, I rewatched the clips with this new knowledge. It was all there. Xander's wife discussed his gambling debts and how he'd been borrowing from company accounts. Marcus's wife tearfully recounted his secret addiction to painkillers. David's wife spoke about his plans to leave the company and take a list of clients with him to a competitor. And Christian's, I couldn't bring myself to watch that one yet. I called Monica immediately and told her everything. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. When she finally spoke, her voice was like ice. "That's it," she said. "No more waiting. We're going to the police, and we're going to burn him to the ground." She's right. But now that I know the full scope of his depravity, I'm wondering if simply handing this over to the cops is enough. These men, his victims, don't know that their entire lives are being used as pawns in my husband's pathetic power trip. Update 4, 1 week later. The past week has been a masterclass in controlled chaos. While I played the part of the oblivious wife at home, making dinner, asking about his day, feigning ignorance, my days were spent orchestrating his downfall. Monica and I became a two-woman command center. She handled the legal side, consulting with an ethics board and a lawyer who specialized in privacy violations, while I focused on the corporate angle. Armed with the encrypted hard drive, I scheduled a discreet off-site meeting with Tommy's regional manager, Xander, and the head of HR. I laid out the whole sordid story, playing them the video clip of Xander's own wife discussing his gambling debts. The look on his face shifted from corporate skepticism to ashen horror in about 5 seconds. To their credit, once they understood the scope of the blackmail and illegal surveillance, they acted swiftly. An internal investigation was launched, and they began cooperating fully with the police, whom Monica had already briefed. The plan was set. The police would come to the house to arrest him. HR would be there to serve him his termination papers. It was going to be a clean, efficient demolition of his entire life. But I had one condition. I told them all, the police, his boss, Monica, that I needed to be the one to confront him first. I needed to see the look on his face when his carefully constructed world came crashing down around him, and I needed him to know that I was the one holding the detonator. They agreed. So last night, I set the stage. I didn't cook. I didn't clean. I just sat at the dining room table in the dark waiting. The silence in our house was no longer sad. It was predatory. When Tommy walked in, he knew something was wrong immediately. He saw me sitting there, my face illuminated only by the screen of my new phone, and his cheerful "I'm home" died in his throat. He asked what was wrong, why I was sitting in the dark. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him, letting the silence stretch until it was screaming. Then I spoke, my voice low and steady. "I know about your special project, Tommy. I know about the assets folder." He tried his usual tactics. Denial. First he laughed, a hollow, nervous sound, and said he had no idea what I was talking about. Then came the gaslighting. He told me my therapy was making me paranoid, that I was inventing conspiracies. He took a step toward me, his face a mask of condescending concern. "Kenzie, honey, you're not well." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply turned my phone around on the table so he could see the screen. I was playing the video labeled Xander, one of his boss's wives, her voice trembling as she confessed her husband's secrets to Monica. The mask didn't just slip, it shattered. For a split second, I saw pure, unadulterated panic in his eyes. He finally understood he was caught. And then the panic curdled into rage. He lunged across the table, not for me but for the phone. He was faster than I expected. He snatched it out of my hand before I could react. I screamed a raw, furious sound. He didn't hesitate. He turned and hurled the phone against the far wall where it exploded into a shower of plastic and glass. "You have no idea what you've done," he roared, his face contorted into a snarl I'd never seen before. He was advancing on me now, backing me into a corner. The yelling began, a torrent of accusations, threats, and blame. He screamed that I had ruined everything, that I was a stupid crazy who couldn't stand to see him succeed. I screamed right back, unleashing months of repressed fear, anger, and betrayal. All the lies, all the manipulation, all the stolen moments of my vulnerability, it all came pouring out in a wave of righteous fury. We were in a full-blown house-shaking standoff, and that's when the front door opened. Tommy froze, his mouth still open, mid-yell. Standing in the doorway were two uniformed police officers, Monica Zander and a woman from HR, holding a thick envelope. They had been waiting outside listening until he made an undeniably aggressive move. Smashing the evidence and cornering me was exactly what they needed. The look on Tommy's face was a masterpiece of disbelief and dawning horror. He looked from the police to his boss to me and back again, his mind finally catching up to the reality of the situation. He had been so focused on destroying the evidence in my hand that he never considered I would have made copies. He thought it was my word against his. He thought he could still bully his way out of it. He was wrong. As the officer stepped forward, cuffs in hand, his entire body sagged in defeat. He didn't say another word. They read him his rights in the ruins of our living room, the smashed pieces of my phone glittering on the floor like confetti at the world's most depressing party. Was it too much, or was it exactly what he deserved? Final update. 2 months later. It's been 2 months since my life imploded, and I'm finally starting to sift through the wreckage to see what's worth rebuilding. The legal process was messy but swift. Faced with a mountain of digital evidence from my hard drive, corroborating testimony from Monica, and the full weight of a corporate lawsuit, Tommy folded. The nail in his coffin was the CCTV footage the police found of him purchasing the specific model of spy camera from a small electronic shop 2 towns over, paying in cash, but using a loyalty card registered in his name. Idiot. He confessed to everything. When the investigators asked him why he did it, why he spied on his wife, why he blackmailed his colleagues and his own brother, his answer was chillingly simple. He told them he was tired of being overlooked. He felt the world owed him success, and he saw my therapy not as a path to healing, but as an untapped resource. He wanted to understand the mechanics of human weakness so he could bend everyone to his will. It was never about a specific promotion. It was about having the power to get anything he wanted whenever he wanted it. It was about control. The fallout was immense. He's facing a laundry list of charges, including illegal wiretapping and multiple counts of extortion. He will be going to prison. His company fired him for cause and is suing him for damages. His brother Christian was horrified to learn what Tommy had on him. It was a confession his wife had made about their struggles with infertility, a secret they had kept intensely private. Christian has completely cut him off, and the rest of his family is reeling. Monica and I, with the help of her lawyer, made the difficult decision to inform the other women whose privacy had been violated. It was awful, but necessary. They deserved to know how their pain had been weaponized. Some of their marriages imploded under the weight of the secrets and the betrayal. Others, like Christian and his wife, are trying to heal. All of them, however, were grateful to know the truth. As for me, I filed for divorce the day after his arrest. I moved out of that house of horrors, and I'm staying in a small apartment that feels like a sanctuary. It's quiet, it's safe, and it's all mine. I'm still seeing Monica, and our sessions are now focused on rebuilding my ability to trust both others and myself. It's a long road, but for the first time in years, it feels like my road. Someone on my original post said that I was becoming the villain to fight a monster. They were right. I drugged my husband, terrorized his innocent therapist, and meticulously plotted the complete annihilation of his life. I broke rules, both legal and moral, but I did it to unmask a man who turned healing into a weapon and pain into a commodity. I did it to protect myself and to get justice for women who didn't even know they were victims. I was and I do it all again in a heartbeat.